back to my channel, and if you're new here, then welcome. My name is Maddie, and today I'll be doing my wrap-up for September. First of all, I am sorry if there's background noise, but I have to put a fan here because it's so hot in this room for some reason. It's like fall has not all the way hit yet. It's still hot and I hate it, so I'm gonna keep the fan on and hope that it's not a distraction. So this is my first wrap up since coming back to BookTube. If you don't know what a wrap up is, it's a video where the agenda is to tell you all about the books that I read this month. I always loved filming these videos. I also love watching reading wrap ups. I get so many books recommended to me just through reading wrap ups, so I hope I can do the same. And something that blows my mind is that I got to 8 of the 9 books that I put on my September TBR. I only missed one book that was from my September TBR. That is insane. I'm pretty proud about that, I'm not gonna lie. And along with that, I read 9 books this month. That is like unreal. My gosh, I really got back into reading. And I think it was because I was in such a big mood to read again that I was able to read that many. So also proud of myself for that. And I mostly read really good books. I had 2 books that were 5 stars and about, I think it was 2 or 3 that were 4 stars, some 3 stars, but none of the books I read this month were below a 3 star, so they were all pretty great. And along with that, I will also let you know the anime that I did watch this month, since I am combining pretty much BookTube and AniTube in one on this channel. So my plan was to let you know the anime I did watch this month. I didn't watch much anime at all because I just wanted to read. I got so into reading again that that's all that was on my mind, but I will let you know the few anime I did see this month. Anyway, with all that introduction out of the way, let's just get started. So the first book I read this month was a reread, and that was The Darkest Star by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is the first book in the Origin series, and spoiler alert, I got to all the books in this series this month. So I completed this whole series this month, which I was super happy about. That was my goal for this month. So The Darkest Star was a reread. If you don't know what this series is about, it's a spin-off of Jennifer L. Armentrout's series, the Lux series. It takes place 4 years after that series, so for that reason I won't go too much into what the Origin series is about, because I don't want to spoil you if you haven't read the Lux series. But basically it follows this girl named Evie, and she gets mixed up with the alien population that is on Earth, and one of those aliens is Luke. And that's all I'm going to say, because I can't think of any other way to state the synopsis for the series without spoiling everything about the Lux series, so we're going to keep it at that. If you have not read the Lux series, I would highly recommend it. I do feel like you need to read that series before going into the Origin series, because even though it's a spin-off, and with spin-offs I feel like usually you could read those separate series on their own. With this series, there's a lot of plot points that come up that refer to the Lux series that I feel like you have to read that series before reading this series. But the Lux series is amazing, so I would highly recommend it. Rereading The Darkest Star was so interesting because the first time I read it, I didn't pick up on all the foreshadowing that led to a huge plot twist that happened later in the book, but while rereading it, I started picking up on all the foreshadowing in it, and I felt so dumb for not predicting the plot twist the first time I read it. It's like the foreshadowing was so obvious. I should have got it, but knowing me, I'm not that smart when it comes to picking up on foreshadowing at all, so that's why I couldn't get it the first time. But now reading it the second time, I picked up on all the foreshadowing. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars the first time I read it. I'm also going to stick to my 5 out of 5 stars. I just really love the first book. Luke, the love interest in this book, in this series, is so swoon-worthy. I love him so much. I gotta say, I love him even more than Damon from the Lux series, which Damon is a huge popular character with the Lux fandom. Like, so many fans love him. But Luke, my god, he's even better. He's even more charming. And what I love about him is that he's a very dark character. Like, he's scary. He's supposed to be the most powerful alien on the planet. Like, he is super scary. However, he has a soft side to him, and I love characters who come off as tough but secretly have soft sides. That's why 𝑘yoh is my favorite character of all time for Fruits Basket. That's the very reason why I love him, because he's the exact same way, so I really, really, really love Luke. Evie is a great character as well. She's pretty entertaining to follow. So this is all around a great first book. I'll get into the other books. The other books weren't as great. I'm gonna leave it at that. And next I read The Deal by Elle Kennedy. This is the first book in her off-campus series. I heard about this book for a while, so I've been really wanting to read it, and I finally did because I saw that I had it on my iBooks on my phone, so I'm like, oh, I might as well read it. I didn't even know I had it. I forgot I had it, so I just randomly picked it up. I loved this book so much. It is a new adult romance, and it follows this girl named Hannah, and she is in college, and she just got her results back from a really hard test in one of her courses, and she aced it, and she was the only student in her class to ace that test. Everyone else pretty much failed. One of those students being Garrett, who is the head of the school's hockey team, and he faces being expelled from the hockey team if his GPA gets really, really low, and because he failed this test, that puts his GPA at risk unless he takes the makeup exam and aces it. But he needs a tutor to do that. So when he finds out Hannah aced the test, he begs her to tutor him. And after a lot of resistance from her, she finally gives in and tutors him, and their tutoring sessions allow them to grow closer, and a romance ensues. That is such a mouthful of a synopsis, but that's pretty much what it's all about. I just fell in love with the relationship between Hannah and Garrett. Hannah has dealt with a lot in her past that is pretty traumatic, but what I love is that Garrett helps her through it, and he really picks up on her triggers and helps her deal with them, which ends up helping her a lot. And I really love that dynamic between them. I felt like they understood each other so much, and it was so cute to see. And this book made me cry. Like, towards the end of it, it actually made me cry, and I did not expect that. I did not expect such a lighthearted book that's supposed to be this one to make me cry, but things came up that dealt with the characters' past that just brought on the waterworks, and I started to really, really feel for them. It was pretty heartbreaking. This series I would highly recommend. I've read the first 2 books so far, but already I just know it's going to be one of my favorite series. It's so good, and it's so fun, and I feel like this series does romance pretty well. At least the first book does. Although I do have to say, I gotta mention triggers because this book has it. Trigger warning for rape. That's a huge thing that comes up in this book, and it's a reoccurring thing that comes up. It doesn't actively happen, but it has to do with Hannah's past, so she mentions it a lot, so be aware of that, and also be aware of abuse, specifically child abuse. So I just want to let you know that before you decide to go into this, if you are thinking about it, because those are huge things in this book. But it was so great, and I cannot wait to read the rest of the books in this series. And I gave the first book, The Deal, 5 out of 5 stars. And then I went into The Burning Shadow by Jennifer L. Armentrout, the second book in the Origin series, first book being The Darkest Star, and wow, this book was disappointing. I still gave it 4 out of 5 stars, so I mean, I still liked it, but compared to The Darkest Star, it was not as great. I won't tell you much of what this is about because it's a continuation in the series, but the main problem I had with this is that the pacing was rough. It was really, really slow at times. I felt like there were a lot of conversations happening and not enough action. I was just waiting for something to happen, but the characters would just idle meaninglessly, and it's really weird because the main conflict in this book is so urgent. Like, it's a matter that needs to be handled pretty much right away, but the characters just don't handle it for a long time, and it makes no sense because I'm like, this is so important. We need to figure out what's causing this right away, but they just, hang out, chat, procrastinate pretty much. And I'm like, shouldn't you be more worried about this? So it just didn't make sense. However, I did like the actual plot that was happening in this book. I thought it was really interesting. But yeah, not as great as The Darkest Star. I wish it could have lived up to how great the first book was, but it just didn't for me. But I still gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I still enjoyed it. The next one I read is Don't Kiss the Bride by Carrie Ann Cole. So I decided to get Kindle Unlimited this month because you get 2 months of it for free, so I thought it was a good deal. And then after that, it's like $10 a month, but I still thought it was a good deal. So I tried it out, and this was the first book I tried out on KU. So this one is an adult romance, and it's a pretty taboo one. It follows this girl, her name is Skylar, and she meets this guy named Jude while she's at school. She has a pretty tough home life, and she's also going through health issues, but she can't afford health insurance. So Jude, a guy she just met, offers to marry her so that he can put her on his health insurance. And she also ends up moving in with him since, like I said, her home life is not great. And a romance blossoms between them. Even though they're technically in a fake marriage, they still grow feelings for each other, of course, because it's a romance. So Skylar is 18, but Jude is 34. So it's a huge age gap, and it is kind of uncomfortable because she's still like technically a teenager. She's only 18 and she's still in high school, so it's a little uncomfortable. So going into this book, I was worried about how problematic this book was going to be because of that scenario, but it really wasn't as problematic as it could have been. Like, I enjoyed it for the most part. And I think what stopped this relationship from being completely toxic is that at least Jude, he was aware that their relationship was toxic because of her age. He was aware that he shouldn't be with her because she's too young, but he couldn't fight those feelings, and I understand that. Once you do fall in love, it's hard to, fight those feelings, but at least he was aware that he shouldn't be with her. I think the main problem I had with this book is that while Jude was more understanding that he shouldn't be with her, his family, on the other hand, was totally encouraging a relationship between them, even though they had explained to his family that they are only married for convenience. That's it, and that they plan to divorce once Skylar has earned enough money by herself to support herself. But they're like, no, you guys should be together. And I'm like, she's 18, right? I felt like they were putting her in harm's way, so that really, really bothered me. I did feel like the romance happened a little too fast. They pretty much realized their feelings for each other at the halfway point. And with the title like Don't Kiss the Bride, I was expecting it to be more of a slow burn, and it really isn't, at least to me. So I wish the romance would have been dragged out a bit more. But I also still enjoyed the romance. I love the relationship between Jude and Skylar. I felt like Jude took such good care of her when she was at her lowest, and that's something she really needed, was that support, because all her life she had a lack of support from all adults, and then Jude comes along and just helps her out, which I thought was really sweet. I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and I will definitely be checking out more of this author's books because the writing was also pretty good, so I definitely plan on doing that. If you are planning to pick up this one, I will also mention trigger warnings for this one. There's trigger warnings for eating disorders. That's a huge thing in this one, so be aware of that. And also hoarding and drug use. That was the one I was forgetting. I was like, what was the other one? Drug use, hoarding, and eating disorders. So just be aware of that. But I do recommend this one. It was really good. Then I got to The Brightest Night by Jennifer L. Armentrout, the 3rd book in the Origin series. Oh man, my most disappointing book I've read in a while, which I just got back into reading, but man, this was a disappointment. Basically, the same problems I had in The Burning Shadow was the same problems I had in this one, but amplified. Like, it just got worse. The plot dragged even more. For so many pages, nothing was happening, and it was so frustrating. There's a lot of training, like montages in this book, where Evie is just training to fight later, and it's just so boring. I was like, how many training scenes do we need to see? We get the point. It was really, really frustrating. And again, There's basically no plot happens until way later, and by then I'm just ready to end it. It was just so slow. So many conversations, not enough action for me, so I really didn't like that. However, I do feel like the romance between Luke and Evie developed even further in this book, and there were just so many sweet moments between them that just had me swooning. And also, because I'm also a fan of the Lux series, a lot of the characters from the Lux series appear in this book, and we get to know how they're doing, and those moments made me swoon so hard. It was really nice to know how their lives are going, and you know, the couples from the Lux series and how they're doing, and some of them are just doing so well. So that was really cool to see, but overall, I was really disappointed in this book. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, and it hurts to give one of Jennifer L. Armentrout's books 3 stars because she is my favorite author, so to find one of her books to be a disappointment sucked so bad. I actually thought this was going to be the last book in this series, but there's going to be one more book, and I didn't know that. I thought this was going to be the last book, and I'm actually not excited that there's going to be a 4th book because this series has dragged so bad. I just wanted it to end already, but I'm still going to read the last book because I do want to know how this series ends. I am intrigued to find out, but I don't have high hopes for the final book because the series has been disappointing. And the next book I read was The Mistake by Elle Kennedy, the 2nd book in the Off-Campus series. So with the Off-Campus series, it is a companion series, so each book follows a different member of the hockey team from the school and their whole romances. So the first one followed Garrett's, and this book follows Logan. So like I said, this one is about Logan. He is a major player. All of the guys on this hockey team are players, so putting that out there, they are like horn dogs. But he is one as well, and he's always had hookups, but he hasn't had an actual relationship in a long time, and he's been kind of craving that. So he randomly, very randomly, meets this girl named Grace, and he has an interaction with her that kind of goes bad. But he realized she's a girl that he actually wants to be serious with, so he has to try to win her back. And their whole complicated relationship ensues from there. So this one I didn't like as much as The Deal. I still liked it okay. I still gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, so still enjoyed it, but compared to The Deal, it wasn't as captivating. My main problem with this is I really didn't like Grace, who is Logan's love interest. And that's disappointing because it also meant that I wasn't the hugest fan of this romance because I didn't like her so much. And it's because of something that happens at the end. Her and Logan get into this argument, and Logan had just gone through something so traumatic, and she knows that, but she starts to make the situation all about her and completely lashes out at him, and I found that to be just so messed up because he was really suffering in that moment, but she just decides to yell at him instead of, I don't know, maybe console him and comfort him. I just really didn't like that, and it made me really not like her. Like, I was liking her okay throughout the book, but then that scene happened, and I was like, girl, I don't like you anymore. Like, he shouldn't even be with you because that was such a crappy thing for you to do. At that point, I could not see what he saw in her and why he kept fighting for her. It was really frustrating. So, she was a character I did not care for whatsoever. However, I loved Logan so much. Oh my god. I love him as much as I love Garrett. He was incredible. I like that he is a player. However, he has this side to him that's so deep. And I feel like with characters who are players, it's easy to write them off as just unimportant, annoying characters with no other character trait except for being horny all the time. But with Logan, we get to see this side to him that is very vulnerable. And I felt like that made him an even more complex character. Like, he's not just a player. He has a side to him that's serious. And he shows his vulnerability, which I really admired about him. His past is so sad. Like, I don't know what's with all the characters in the series and having just traumatic backstories, but they do, and it makes me feel for them a lot. I also cried in this book, like I did with The Deal. These books are just making me cry. I don't know if that was the intention for those scenes to make readers cry, but they did to me. So I really felt for these characters, and I loved Logan. Grace, though, unfortunately, I did not care for at all. But this book gets 4 out of 5 stars just because I love Logan. Like, he saved this book for me. And also, I gotta mention the trigger warning that is in this book, which is alcohol abuse. But that's pretty much it. And the next book I got to was Caraval by Stephanie Garber. So, I read this book because my mom read this entire series recently, and she really loved it. And she was like, you gotta read this. So, I decided to pick it up. So, Caraval, it takes place in a fantasy world, and there's this event that happens pretty often called Caraval, and what it's all about, it's a sort of, I don't even know how to describe it anymore. At first I thought it was a circus. It's not actually a circus. It's pretty much this magical town that happens. So the main plot of this is this girl, Scarlet. Her sister gets kidnapped by the ringleader of Caraval, and in order to get her sister back, she has to win Caraval to win her back. So that's why she goes through this event, just to get her sister back. Like I said, going into this, I thought Caraval was a circus. It is not a circus. I feel like that's very misleading, because I've heard that a lot of readers before going into this thought Caraval was a circus. It's not. So if you're going into this thinking it's going to be a whole circus theme, it's not. Caraval kind of has elements of a circus in it, but there's no performance that happens. There's no performers or anything like that. There are performers, but they don't actually perform. They just tell the contestants of this game what to do, and that's it. But I will say that the atmosphere of Caraval, the event itself, is very whimsical. It definitely has that kind of circus atmospheric type thing to it, if you know what I mean. So I actually like the characters in this book. I liked Scarlet. I found her very intriguing. She had a lot of ambition, which I thought was pretty nice. And a few of the side characters I liked as well. But I feel like the problems I had in this book outweighed the positives about it. So the main plot in this book is Scarlet trying to get her sister back. And she tries to get her back because she cares about her sister. But the problem I have is that we never get the sisterly bond between them. The Caraval event happens pretty quickly into this book, so leading up to that, we don't get a lot of moments between Scarlet and her sister, and so I could never really grasp the bond between them. So because of that, I could never understand why Scarlet cared so much about getting her sister back, because we never have any moments between them that make you care about their relationship. And actually her sister, I ended up not liking that much. I found her to be very bratty. And so, because I didn't care much about her sister, I was like, Scarlet, why do you want her back so much? She's kind of a pain in the ass, you know? So, I just wish I could have gotten more of a grasp on their bond so that I could care about the main point of this book, which is Scarlet trying to win her sister back. But I just didn't. Also, the writing is very weird. I feel like there were so many jumps between scenes that the transitions between the scenes didn't flow nicely for me. Sometimes I wouldn't even know the setting we were in because the scene would change so rapidly. But I did enjoy the mystery in this book, which is the characters trying to figure out who Legend is, and Legend is the ringleader of Caraval. He's the leader of it. And so I was intrigued by that mystery. I also wanted to know who exactly is Legend, because he's the person in charge of this whole Caraval thing. So I got a 3 out of 5 stars for me. Originally, I wasn't going to continue on with this series because I didn't absolutely love the first book, but my mom really wants me to continue on with it. So because of that, I'm going to read the second book in October, and hopefully it does get better, but Caraval didn't impress too much. And the next book I got to was a manga, and that is Tomie by Junji Ito. Oh my god, this book is so heavy. This one, it's a horror, as Junji Ito's mangas typically are, and it's about this girl named Tomie, and she has this ability to regenerate. And the main plot of this book is each chapter focuses on her and her relationship with someone else, mainly romantic relationships that she has, and the guys she dates tend to love her so much that they want to kill her. It's very bizarre. So they always end up killing her, but yet she always comes back to life. So I was interested in that premise. However, it took me a really long time to get into this one. I didn't start actually enjoying this until the halfway point. I feel like the first half of this collection just bored me because each chapter was so repetitive. What would happen, like I said, Tomie would get involved with a guy, and they would fall in love with her so much that they want to kill her, So they would kill her, and then she'd come back to life. And then that would be repeated each and every chapter, and it just got so repetitive that I was getting bored of the chapters. However, in the last half of the book doesn't focus much on her relationship with guys. It has other scenarios she gets into as well. But also Tomie herself, I felt like she was so one note, just so one-dimensional. She is described as a seductress, but that's basically all there is to her. Her whole character is that she seduces men and that she's vile, and that's it. You know nothing else about her, and I just found that very, very boring. So this one was disappointing. I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars. I had read Uzumaki, which is another work by Junji Ito, and I really enjoyed Uzumaki. So because of that, I thought I would like Tomie, but I didn't that much. It was just alright. I think I would have liked this more if it had just been a short story. I felt like this didn't need to be multiple chapters of individual stories because they all got so repetitive. But if this was just one small, one-chapter short story, I think I would have enjoyed it more. But unfortunately, I didn't. And finally, I feel like I've been filming forever. Man, that's a good thing. That means I read a lot this month. Finally, the last book I read this month was Den of Vipers by K.A. Knight. This is another book that was on Kindle Unlimited, so I still wanted to make use of my KU account, so I was like, you know what, for my final book this month, let's pick up a random book from KU. I had never heard about this book before. I just went through the top romance books on KU at the moment, and this was on it, and I specifically chose it because I thought the cover looked so cool. Like, the cover is so cool. I love this design. So that's mainly the reason I chose it. I knew nothing about it going into it. My God. I feel like this is the one book on this wrap-up that I have the most things to say about, because let me tell you, I was not prepared for the content that was in this book. It low-key kind of traumatized me. So going into the synopsis, this is an adult romance, and it is a reverse harem, which I've never read a reverse harem before, or a harem either, so this was an interesting one. And it's about this girl named Roxanne, and she gets sold to this mafia. They are the ultimate mafia that is ruling the whole city, and her dad sells her to them because he needs to repay a debt. So she is kidnapped by this mafia and forced to live with them. And so she gets wrapped up in their world and ends up developing feelings for them, and also ends up screwing all of them multiple times, multiple times. That's basically what this whole one is about. There's not a lot of plot to it besides that. Oh my God. So, like I said, I'd never heard about this one before, but it actually has a bit of a following for bad reasons. It's pretty infamous. Like, the Goodreads reviews I saw were interesting. There were a lot of people who did actually like it, but so many didn't. And I could understand why someone would not like this book because of the content matter. So let's get into it. So this book is mostly porn with no plot. There's very, very little plot in this book. And I prefer there to be plot in my books, so I wasn't a huge fan of that. Like, I'm all for smut. I love reading smut. I will say that proudly. I love reading smut. But when it's so much, and there's so much of it that there's barely any plot, that does bother me because I still love to have plot in my books. But the plot in this book doesn't start until, like, 50% in, and it ends at like 80% into it. And going into this, I wasn't nervous because it is a reverse harem, and I've never read anything like that before, so I didn't know how well I was going to take to a poly relationship in a book because I like to root for one couple, and that be the it couple. So to have a girl and her being in a relationship with 4 different guys, it did make it hard for me to really connect to each relationship, because they all were romantic. And I like seeing a character have romantic feelings for one person because that way I can focus solely on that relationship and how it's developing. But when she also has a romance with so many other characters, to me it makes her romance with one specific guy harder to connect to because she also has that same connection with other guys. It just makes her other relationships less meaningful to me. So because of that, I'm not sure if I'll ever read another reverse harem again. We'll see. And the writing in this one was so cheesy at times. It was hard to read at times. Some of the words used to describe the way the characters get turned on were so cringy, I can't even repeat them. And some of the sex scenes were really over the top. And one of them, like I said, pretty much traumatized me. Oh my god, like I've been off and on, I'll think about this scene throughout these past days since I've read it, and I will just like want to gag. Like I've said, I've read a lot of smut, like a lot, but I have never read anything like this. So basically, I won't go into the whole scene, but it involves putting a knife somewhere where knives do not belong, if you know what I mean. And then that scene ensues to make it even more graphic and disturbing, and my reaction to that scene was something. I like had to put the book down and just be like, what the fuck did I just read? It was just something. And I heard a lot of opinions about that scene after I read it. Like, it's pretty talked about by everyone who's read it. Yeah, that traumatized me pretty much. So this one was an experience. It really was. It was shocking, cringy, but that's what made it kind of enjoyable. The main reason why this did get knocked down a lot of stars, though, is because the plot. There's just no plot. There isn't. There's very, very little in it, and this book is 650 pages, and there's no reason why it should have been that long, because it just starts to drag. The plot, like I said, ends and gets wrapped up at like 80% of the book, and then the rest of the book is just sex scene after sex scene and just useless scenes going on that I'm like, why is this necessary? The plot has already been wrapped up. We don't need all this. And basically, I skimmed the last 25% of the book because I just didn't really care anymore. However, I did like these characters. I found the main character to be very interesting. She was very feisty, and I liked that. I also did like some of the guys in the Mafia. My favorite guy is definitely Kenzo. He is pretty brutal like the rest of the guys are, but he has a soft side to him, and I love, like I said, I love tough-looking male characters who also have secret soft sides, and he definitely was that, so I appreciated him a lot. But yeah, this book was pretty cringy. I wouldn't exactly recommend it because I don't know how to recommend this book because it needs a certain audience, and I think I was that audience, but, you know, I can't recommend this one because of the content matter and how just graphic it is with its sex scenes, and the violence in it is so brutal and hard to read. Like, it made me cringe. It's a dark one. It's a dark romance. So yeah, 3 out of 5 stars. It was just fine. It was entertaining, at least. I just got done wrapping up this whole video, but I forgot to talk about the anime I watched this month. It's been a long day. I am really, really tired. So let's go into the anime I watched this month. So I only watched 2, and one of them I haven't even finished yet, but I'll still mention it. So the first one is My Hero Academia. I have been continuing watching and reacting to this one on my channel, so that's been a good time. And I'm 7 episodes into this at this point, so it's going good. I feel like it is like at a part where I'm not like completely interested in right now. Right now, what's happening in it is just battles between Class A and Class B, which are entertaining enough, but I am looking forward to there being more of a plot this season and not just battles, you know? So we'll see if that happens. I'm sure it will. It'll probably happen in the second quarter of this season, but we'll just see. But I'm still enjoying it okay. And then the only other anime I saw this month was King's Game, and this is one I've never heard about before, but I just decided to look on my Funimation account and just see if anything on there interested me, and the synopsis to this one piqued my interest, so I tried it out and I ended up liking it pretty okay. This one is a survival game anime, and it's about this game called King's Game, and the whole purpose behind this game is that people will get text messages from the king, and the king will tell them to do a specific thing, and if they don't do that thing, then they die. And that's basically the whole plot of this one. So this one follows our main character, and he moves to a new school and goes into a new class, and he's someone who has gotten text messages from the king, and soon afterwards his entire class starts getting text messages from the king. And so some of them start dying off because they haven't accomplished what the king told them to do. And the whole way to win this game is if you are the last person standing, the last person who has not been killed, you win the game. So this one is pretty intense. It's pretty much, the whole thing is just really depressing because there's so much death involved, so it's gonna be depressing. And I have at this point, I never realized this, but I've watched a lot of anime that follow a survival game type of thing. I guess that's a whole genre in anime at this point, is survival game anime. Basically as popular as isekai anime is. Like, there's a lot of them. And this one was pretty decent. I liked it a lot, actually. I'm surprised I never heard about it before. I found the characters pretty fascinating to watch, and how they dealt with getting these text messages to tell them to do something, otherwise they'll die. Like, the way they handled it was pretty realistic. Like, they were freaked out. That's how I would be. And a lot of the scenes were pretty brutal. Like, the deaths were brutal to watch. They were very depressing at times. One thing I found really disturbing, and I think this is something that separates this survival game anime from other survival game anime, is that the things that the king would request these teenagers to do were so explicit and terrible. There were so many instances where the king would request that these kids have sex with each other. I'm not even kidding. And it was so disturbing to watch because they're just teenagers. But the king would say, you have to hook up with this person or you will die. And that was really hard to watch. I feel like it would also be hard to watch if this was with adults, of course. But these are just teens who, most of them are all virgins. And so for them to be forced to have sex with each other, it was hard to watch. And it was really disturbing. And it kind of mixes the morals of consent a lot. And that kind of bothered me. But that was also out of the kids' control. Like, it really showed how horrible the king was. Like, that's horrible to request, and just made this king so perverted in a way. I'm like, why would you request that? And it happened multiple times. Like, he could tell them to do anything, but he tells them to do that, and it was pretty hard to watch. But yeah, I enjoyed this one. I give it 4 out of 5 stars. I don't know how to rate anime, but I guess I'll rate them the same way I rate books, and with this 5-star system. So 4 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed it, and I'd highly recommend it. But trigger warnings for death, lots of gore. I guess I would say rape as well because of what I just discussed with the borderline non-consent situations we have. And I guess that's pretty much it. I feel like there's a lot of triggers that come with this one. Like, it's a dark anime, so just be aware of that. That is it. I feel like I rambled so much, and I'm really, really sorry, but I was genuinely so excited to talk about books I read in a month. Like, doing a wrap-up again. So I was so excited to talk about these books. But I might need to do some cutting because I really talked for a long, long time there. So I hope you don't mind, and hopefully this video isn't too long. Let me know if you read any of these books and what you thought of them. I would really like to know, and I guess that's it. I'll be back with my October wrap-up for sure because I plan to read a lot in October as well, so that's going to happen. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more anime-related videos and book-related videos. And if you'd like to follow me on social media, you can totally do that. Those links will be in the description box, and I'll be back really soon. Bye!